I tried Plasma Exchange for the first time and it completely rewired my body. Here's what you need to know. They say youth can't be bottled, but what if you could literally filter it through your veins? I'm going to take you through exactly what I went through with TPE, which is Therapeutic Plasma Exchange. I had never heard of this before, but my friend who is a trusted nurse told me that she really wanted me to check it out. And I'm going to get into what some of the health benefits are and exactly what my experience was like. So maybe you can benefit from doing the same. When it comes to my health, I'm all about biohacking and anything that's going to improve longevity and overall wellness, but I definitely do my research. So a friend of mine who's a nurse called me and said, I want you to try TPE. And I was like, what on earth is that? I had never heard of it. And then after she mentioned it, I started seeing some influencers talking about it. That has nothing to do with why I went for it, but it is something that I began to notice after my experience. So to break it down in very simple terms, the way my friend pitched it to me was that it's like an oil change, but for your blood. So what they're essentially going to do, and this is going to be done by a highly trained nurse, and they are going to take the blood out of your body, put it through a machine that's going to separate it. I'll get into that a bit later. And then they're going to put it back into your body much cleaner than when you started. If you're new to my channel, my name's JoAnna Pallante. I'm a mom, an entrepreneur, and I have a passion for holistic living. So I am all about wellness and longevity, but this was just something that I had never heard of. And as I started to research it, I was getting a little nervous. I wasn't sure if this was something that I really needed or that I should go for. Because when you start to dive into what TPE is, they will tell you that it can be very beneficial for people who are going through some sort of health crisis like MS or Lyme disease, which my sister's actually battling right now. So there are people that may benefit for plasma exchange for different reasons, and then there's people like me who are doing it a bit more proactively. And the further I dived into my research, the more and more I realized that this is one of the most underutilized things out there. It's possibly just a complete game changer for overall health and wellness, but I think why some people may shy away from it is the cost, and I will dive into that in a bit. So the nurse friend of mine who introduced me to this, she is part of a wellness and longevity clinic, and she really knows her stuff. And she had actually come to me several months ago asking me about fertility and IVF, because I went through IVF when I had my daughter, who's now 3, and I experienced two different outcomes, one where I was heavily medicated, and then another experience where I took a more natural approach. And I speak about this in some of my other videos. But as a woman who was struggling and someone who knew part of what my journey was like, my friend reached out to me and said, hey, can you help me? I'm really struggling in the IVF arena. And I referred her to my doctor, gave her my take on things, and she was still struggling a bit with getting her embryos. So when she tried TPE for the first time, she was coming from a place where fertility was a struggle. And then all of a sudden she did TPE and things began to change. So after her experience with her plasma exchange, she had a very positive IVF outcome. She got her embryos and she's gearing up for pregnancy. So once I heard this, that kind of sealed the deal for me. I still wanted to dive into the research a bit more, but hearing someone's personal experience that just resulted in something so positive for her, I said this is definitely something worth looking into. So as far as what actually happens in this process and my experience, which I'm going to share with you, is I went to the office where the nurse had this fancy machine that they use for TPE, and I was told ahead of time to block off about 2 to 3 hours for the process. And what happens is you get an IV in your arm, and what they're doing is they're taking out the blood from your body, they're running it through this machine, and in simple terms, they're putting it back to your body fully cleansed of all of the bad stuff. So in the actual plasma exchange process, they're taking the plasma out from your blood, and it's going to be carrying some, bad things, toxins. My nurse friend explained it might be, environmental toxins, things like that, heavy metals. So these are all going to get stripped out of your blood and then filtered through this machine, and then it's going to go back into your system with albumin. So the process can take maybe as little as 2 hours, maybe up to 5 hours. It really just depends on the person's blood and how long it takes to get that out of their body through this machine and then back into your system. And it's going to vary person to person. For me, it was about a full 3 hours. I kind of wish that I went into it with like an audiobook or something on TV to watch to distract me, but it wasn't really that bad. There was no pain or anything like that. So it was mostly just a matter of not being able to do anything with my hands for those 3 hours, because you've got one IV in here, and it's this catheter that's taking your blood, and then another one that's putting the clean blood back into your system. So for 3 hours of your time, what you can really do is just get out all of those impurities and things that might be causing brain fog or autoimmune diseases. I mean, the amount of things that this can really help with, it's starting to become more and more popular as more and more people are struggling with autoimmune diseases and things like that. And essentially your red blood cells and all of the good things are going to go back into your body. They're just going to be cleaner than when you started. So you should really start to feel health benefits almost immediately. That same day, I was a bit tired, I think just because of the overall process on my body, which was something that my friend had warned me to experience. I went and got myself a coffee and I was fine. Took it a little easy that day, went to bed early, but the next day I did really notice this surge in my energy level, and I continued to feel that throughout the week. I think my body responded really, really well to the treatment. If I were to use an analogy to just kind of break this down in layman terms, it's like if you had a tank full of fish and you took the water out, but the fish stayed inside, and you just took all that dirty stuff out and then fill the tank back up with all the good things. That's essentially what you're doing to your body with a plasma exchange. As far as fertility goes, they are still doing some studies on this, but it has been shown to help improve outcomes with fertility, which makes sense because when I went through my IVF process, I took a very holistic approach. And some of the most important things when you're trying to get pregnant are just your overall nutrition, health, and wellness. So if you can take out all of those toxins ahead of something like pregnancy, when you want to be just in your absolute best physical shape, then I think why not give this a try, especially if you're planning a pregnancy like I was with IVF, so you know the timing of things. You should do one of these plasma exchanges potentially a couple of weeks before a transfer day. And the place where I had this done, they really are top-notch, A+ professionals. They made sure that I was comfortable throughout the whole process. They had a little snack bag for me. I stayed hydrated. So really there was nothing weird that I was feeling throughout the process. I wasn't nervous or anything like that. It was just really a matter of, getting through 3 hours of just kind of sitting there with these two things in my arm. And I did this through a company called Rejuve Health, and they made me feel just completely at ease. They took me through the entire process, had me fully aware of what I was getting myself into when I started, and then checked on me afterwards. I would highly recommend looking into this company for overall health, wellness, longevity, things like that. So I am now about 1 month out from the procedure. I overall feel better. I do a really good job of tracking things like my biomarkers. I will get into that in another video. I actually just did another round of lab testing with a company called Superpower that I really love. So I'm gonna see if there are any tangible results from having done this plasma exchange as soon as I get those Superpower test results. So I will be sure to share those with you as soon as I have. But I think the number one thing that is holding this back from being a more mainstream process for people is the cost, because what I have heard is that the range could be in the thousands up to around $10,000 for a treatment. Now, if you are really suffering with something like Lyme disease, which my sister is going through now, she's had antibiotics in her arms through an IV for weeks, trying to get better from that. It's just a really big struggle for her. She had to take time off from work. I would say looking into a procedure like this would be absolutely worth it just to get her quality of life back on track as quickly as possible, because I think that it only makes sense to me. And again, I'm no doctor or nurse, but the idea of just giving your blood that absolute cleanse when it's got something like, the toxins from the Lyme disease flowing through it, it should really be something that someone like my sister should look into, just because having clean blood, what could be the harm in that, right? So if you are experiencing some kind of inflammatory disease, autoimmune disease, I would recommend looking into this treatment. But if you are someone like me who is looking into just overall health, wellness, anti-aging, maybe it's for fertility, there are definite benefits there as well. So I would definitely recommend looking into that. But the cost is for sure a consideration. And I think that it is worthwhile. Again, if you're really struggling with something, if you're doing it to be more proactive, it's something to really weigh in, because there are other alternatives that I like out there that you can do for less cost, but maybe they just simply aren't as effective. So if you are looking to invest in your health and wellness long-term, plasma exchange is something I would give a thumbs up on. So after I did the plasma exchange, which, as I mentioned earlier, was solely off of a trusted nurse's recommendation, then I started seeing it a little bit more mainstream. It was popping up on Instagram. It's like one of those things psychologically when you've never heard of something before and then someone mentions it, all of a sudden it's everywhere. And I saw Logan Paul recently did it. I really am a believer in a lot of the stuff that Gary Brecka talks about. I think he's a brilliant biohacker. I use a lot of his products. The body health line is something that I'm a big fan of. He was talking about the benefits of this because it can remove mold from your system. It can remove spike proteins. It can remove all sorts of inflammatory things like the microplastics that everyone's talking about now. I've made a conscious shift to get away from plastic bottles. So just thinking about all of those things living in your blood, if you can take them out by doing this plasma exchange, why not give it a try? And when I was doing my preliminary research on it, I saw that Scooter Braun's ex-wife, Yael Cohen, she's very actively involved in this, again, from a proactive standpoint. She's involved with a clinic in London because she's such a believer in this. And she is, I think, doing it more for the anti-aging and overall wellness, proactive things that I was going for. So I think my biggest takeaway from this experience is, yes, it is a very expensive procedure. It's not something that's for everyone just because of the high cost. But when you think about all of the things that you spend money on and your time and the things that you invest in for your overall health and wellness, if you could take one treatment and really get the kind of benefit that plasma exchange is known for, it may be worth the investment. And for some people, it might not. But for me, I thought that it was something that if I'm spending all this money on NAD and lymphatic massages and all this overall health and wellness, and I could just take this one master treatment and see this big, substantial health benefit from, and more so from a proactive standpoint, because I'm all about being proactive, right? Rather than reactive. I don't want to get sick and have to find the cure. I want to get ahead of these things so I can live a long, healthy life and be my best self for my daughter and my family. So this was definitely a proactive decision on my part. I am hoping to see really tangible results when I get my labs. So I will share those with you in my next video. And I think if you've landed on this video because you are actually struggling with things, whether it's just your overall health and wellness and fatigue or an unknown condition, maybe you're just trying to figure out why your body isn't operating at 100%, I would recommend looking into this and just doing your research. It's not for everyone, but it could be really powerful. If you liked my take on this in this video, I really appreciate you being here. And if you could take a moment to subscribe, I promise to share with you all of my tried and true health and wellness, no gimmicks, just things that really work for me, things that I really believe in. I appreciate you being here. I share a lot on my Instagram as well. It's at JoAnna Pallante. Let me know if you have any questions about the plasma exchange or other biohacking, longevity treatments that you've done, or things that I can explain for you that I may have experienced. I really appreciate you. Thanks so much.